Well done, Baku. Well done, you, for backing DR with me. Well done, Ferrari, for proving us wrong about Red Bull Racing having the reliability issues. And well done, Lando, Norris, for showing your true, petulant and useless colours. G'day there, my name is James Baldwin and welcome to another episode of Lakeside Drive's F1 podcast. In this episode, we review the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And I'm joined in person in Tommy T's house with, conveniently, Tommy T. G'day, mate.
Feels weird to be in person, doesn't it?
It does, even more so
it's
because
good.
Freya's also here.
That is very strange. It's not so strange.
It is very well compared to where you live, yes.
Well,
One extreme to the other. One extreme to the other. It's good to be here, guys. In person, finally. I now live in Melbourne, which is great. So there'll be more in-person content with TT.
For now, you live in Melbourne. Who knows? It changes very frequently, James.
All the time. If you know me, you know that's a very true statement. But Freya, it's great to have you in person as well. Really glad we could line this up for what wasn't too bad of a race. The last couple of laps were exceptionally stressful.
Freya had to stand up. I now realise more about Freya than I ever have. Yeah. She's a stressed stander, like folded arms, pacing almost.
Left the televisions, couldn't watch anymore. Yep. I'm done, that's it, I'm done. That was what was coming out.
Blame McLaren, don't look at me.
Yeah. It's only a couple of minutes after the race has finished, so we are really just diving straight into our thoughts out of this, which is a fantastic place to be. But what I want to start with is absolutely my favourite part of this podcast. It is Tommy T's television broadcast review.
Tommy Telly.
Tommy Telly. Let's shorten it.
Well, I did try and avoid it as much as I could, even though it wasn't actually a good time to watch Formula One for once in Melbourne. It was a semi-decent practice session.
Not for qualifying, that was terrible.
Qualifying was okay in comparison to what it usually can be.
Okay, good point.
I was just trying to avoid it because there was so much talk of Daniel the whole week, and it was littered throughout the practices I did see. So I was just here for qualifying as much as I could. But we kind of had... We're looking at them now. We're still watching the post-race, and we've got Johnny Herbert and we've got Damon Hill. And that is just the buffoons. I was trying to think of something nicer, but that buffoons fits. They're just really frustrating as a team as well because I think they like egg each other on with useless commentary. So that's never a good start. We didn't have the all-star cast of Ted.
Brundle.
No Brundle. So we're already starting at a deficit there, really. Not really much to report. It was kind of a nothing broadcast. There was a few little things. There was no real big shining moments that stand out. We had one in the on the grid walk. We had Rachel Brooks interviewing Lando Norris. And the question was, Lando, what kind of car have you got today?
To which
the three of us had some very witty retorts instantly, didn't we?
We did. I said an orange one, Rachel.
A NASCAR.
Yeah.
I said NASCAR.
Ridiculous. And James actually thought Paul di Resta was okay. Freya jumped to the defense of Paul di Resta. We think he's fine. James doesn't like Paul di Resta for some reason, but says he's been better.
Well, this weekend it's not difficult to be better considering you absolutely have the B team on Sky. And when you're generally around anyway, it's easier to lift to make it look like you're performing better. But to his credit, and of course being the Daniel Ricciardo biased person that I am, and yes, I do occasionally swear on a podcast, as I try to say to Campy though, just do it for weight. See, when I swear, there's some weight behind it.
And
because
it's funny because then you do the little team radio sound. It's funny, and I love it.
Exactly right. But it really has annoyed me, as many of you know, for this whole dialogue around DR, which you can all put in the bin now after this result for this race. But to Paul's credit, he came out and defended Daniel because Crofty's just trying to get that. You might as well call him davidnews.com.au Croft. The amount of clickbaity crap that he comes out with is just ridiculous. We all have opinions about Crofty. That is absolutely true. But PDR was absolutely coming to DR's defence, and I'm here for that. I think there is a lot that Paul can be better at. But certainly this year, I think he's been pretty average. But this weekend, he was pretty good. So I'm happy to allow you guys to like PDR. I still think he should be better. I still think the whole Sky thing should be better.
James.
But certainly, you know, he's at the very top of the B team.
Top of the B team, because he's getting groomed, it seems, to take over in that key
That's
role.
what Campy seems to think, but I don't agree.
Yeah.
I mean, Brundle's not going anywhere anytime soon.
What about Brundle Jr.?
Alex and Alex.
Just straight, yeah.
Quite literally put Alex Jakes in, because Alex Jakes and Alex Brundle in F2 and F3 commentary last year and many years before that have been an incredible team. And it's basically like having Martin Brundle anyway, because the way that he says certain words is so much like his dad, and I'm absolutely here for it.
Different voice, but the cadences and stuff is exactly the same. The phrasing is exactly the same. You're right. Yeah. So we should quickly talk about the anthem.
Yeah, so there's no more flyovers. And Tilly Willy pointed that out. There is no more flyovers, which is really disappointing. As we're watching it,
the timing. That was what we got. So we got to see some 18s and 14s just then.
Yeah, exactly right. But for the anthem, look, I've written a note here. Minor key vibes. Campy would have his tick of approval all over this.
Yeah.
In fact, I know he did, because in the preview episode, which if you haven't listened to yet, you should go back and listen to, by the way. But he absolutely is for it, and he's very correct.
It's because he can remember the lyrics for this one.
Yeah, instead of just with the Italian national, I mean, love it every time he does the Italian national anthem. He's like, da 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 da. Still manages to snort halfway through that somehow. But yeah, it says Azerbaijan about 12 times at the end. But for the anthem, for me, it's an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a great performance. I'm going to maybe deduct points, Freya, though, because of the flag.
Dress /flag. Is it dress flag? I don't know. I wasn't here for that. It kind of looked like someone's kind of year 10 like craft project. And they're like, I know, we'll make the dresses the flag.
It looked to me like the Pink Panther when Kato like dresses up as the wall to try and hide her as he jumps out. It was very interesting, wasn't it? So have you got a score there, James, for the anthem itself, or are we just going
I think 8.5 out of 10 for the anthem, -1 point for the dress. So 7.5 out of 10. But for the broadcast, look, the Johnny Herbert, and something we haven't mentioned yet, the Johnny Herbert commentary earlier this week around, let's replace Daniel Ricciardo with Pierre Gasly, because Pierre Gasly, has a history of performing, except for that time when he didn't perform at Red Bull, but that's fine. It's just ridiculous and just doesn't help to anything. So the existence of those two, Damon Hill and, as you said, the two buffoons, which is it's like the two old Muppets, aren't they, sitting up in the thing and shouting, egging each other on down a certain path. All they're trying to do is find relevance, right? Yeah. And I've said this many times, Campy and Johnny Herbert have the same number of World Drivers' Championships. But because Campy is younger, he's probably more relevant in Formula One than Johnny Herbert is anymore. So it's watching these two older guys who are great in their day, well, certainly one of them was, struggle for relevance. Yeah. And they're leaning too heavily into the clickbaity crap, as I mentioned earlier, and it's just no good. So for that, personally, I would be scoring it maybe 3 out of 10.
Yeah, it has to be below a 5, doesn't it? It's below a pass. It was very boring. I think 3's fair. I think it's a pretty rubbish one.
Freya, any thoughts?
So it sounds like great anthem and not much else.
the anthem carried the broadcast.
The fact that we're in Baku is worth at least 2 points there.
Yeah, you do get some great footage. Like there's some well-placed cameras as well on that track. Yep. Like I think it's after the castle section, and it's right on that corner where they go really wide, just looking at you, and you just get the most epic angle of them coming around with the castle in the background. So a couple of points for some good scenery.
I still think they could do the castle section better. I want to see some get up and put something on the castle looking straight down, like a bird's eye of them coming through really tight through there. Exploit it. At one point we were just kind of getting before the castle, after the castle. I was like, can we see the tight section that's really interesting?
Yeah.
But that was kind of throughout the race. It just seemed like they weren't really relevant, getting any footage there really. But yeah, 3. It was pretty poor. But this is what we get when we just take Sky's feed.
Let's talk about some news between Monaco and this race, and of course we've got Canada very shortly after this one too. It's good to get into some quick fire races, but we briefly mentioned, and it's so great having Munnis back on the podcast. He is an absolute gem of an Irish Australian human
Minus
being.
the menace.
He absolutely is. And I know many of you who listen have really enjoyed having him on as well. He has some great opinions and is exceptionally funny. But it was interesting talking about with him and with Campy about Perez and the whole thing. We were talking the morning after the Monaco Grand Prix, and the contract extension that was kind of known about before he even walked off the podium. But it's interesting now looking at what that means sort of for the Red Bull talent pool more widely, doesn't it? Because Pierre Gasly, of course, and we have always said that he shouldn't go back to Red Bull, but this is securing his I'm not going back to Red Bull. He's even come out and said it's a logical decision for Red Bull Racing to secure Perez going forward, and that he's in conversations with Red Bull management about what's next for him. But Freya, I mean, realistically, he needs to go somewhere else. He needs to go into a team that is more of a constructor, maybe Alpine or McLaren or somewhere else like that. But where does he go and when does he make that move?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like you said, where does he go? Like, it's hard to see where there's an opening at the moment, especially if you look like someone like an Alpine, for example. They've got Oscar Piastri ready to go when they're ready to make a switch. McLaren have 2 contracted drivers, despite what everybody else seems to think in terms of the, like just how flimsy those apparently are. But, so McLaren's a no-go, Alpine's no-go. Where does he go next? It's hard to see what a good move for him would be when he's at the end of the day doing well at AlphaTauri. He's for the most part outperforming his teammate this year. He hasn't been quite as reliable as he was last year in terms of just performances weekend on weekend. But yeah, I think it's hard to say, to be honest. Tommy, what do you reckon?
I don't reckon there is a logical spot, and that's kind of the weird thing about Formula 1 at the moment is it's pretty sewn up. There's young talent coming through, but James and Campy hate that a lot.
We learned that last week.
There is this constant push of new talent every single year, and we've still got these drivers that aren't leaving Formula 1, so it's just kind of banking up this pool of talent in Formula 1 that we don't need. There's no real logical seat that's up for grabs right now, at least not a seat of a driver of Pierre's talent you would think that he would want to shift to, unless there becomes an opening at Mercedes, say, if Lewis decides that he doesn't want to follow around George all year and he's done. I don't think that's what Lewis will do, but there's every chance. If he's sick of having his spine shaken out of his head, he might tap out.
He might not have a choice,
But I'm with you. I don't think there's a logical spot, and I would probably stay where I was if I was him, and maybe just try and do 1-year contracts, or sign a longer term contract with the clause of I'll leave when I want to leave beforehand.
And that's it. We talk about the challenge of being on short contracts in terms of what that means when it comes to uncertainty for drivers and not feeling valued and that type of thing. But if that's actually your card to play and it's your decision, then it is quite different. And for you, it's actually more of a control factor of keeping your options open if something else does become available. And I think the other thing you have to be careful with someone like Gasly is that now he has only really driven those 2 cars, one really for any period of time, and then it's going to be even more difficult to change teams and have to learn a new car and everything else when something else is being built around you. So it's going to make a transition even more challenging when that does happen.
Yeah, and I mean, he's firmly out of our bin. There's nothing we can do about removing him from
never
for
a
long year now.
But we want to see him stay in the sport. It's interesting now looking though at the junior program. So I think Yuki's probably doing enough to stay in Red Bull's junior talent program for a while. Will we ever see him go into Red Bull Racing proper? Probably not, to be honest. I mean, there's plenty of other talent around the potential. And I think what they've learnt with Sergio Perez is looking outside the pool and offering someone to come in is not necessarily a bad thing.
Can we get rid of Dr. Helmet now?
That would be great.
Do we need that junior team? Because that hasn't yielded the next anything, has it?
No, it hasn't. But yeah, it's interesting looking at Formula 2 and likes of Armstrong and Liam Lawson and those guys who are strong. The problem is they're kind of similar ages now to Max and Lando and George. So whilst, I'm like, I don't want young drivers in the sport, fine. A lot of these talented guys are finding out that there's just no seats. And where do you go? Indy or Formula E? And it's a waste of some of this talent and some of these characters like Liam Lawson. I think he's an absolute superstar, and he has performed exceptionally well in DTM and done some other amazing things as well. It's a shame when you've got absolute morons like Lance Stroll, who loves a barrier, still driving around. And we all know why he's there with daddy's money. It's funny, Naomi Schiff said, at one point talking about DR, there's 20 fastest drivers on the grid. No, incorrect. They're not. Absolutely not.
18's fair.
There's a lot of pay drivers here. Latifi, Joe, and Stroll, off the top of my head.
Yep.
But it's like, come on.
And the thing is that, a lot of people will say, the more experienced drivers, your Alonso, your Vettel, like time to move on, guys. And you go, well, they're still contributing a lot to the sport.
Yeah. Both beat their teammates.
They're still, first of all, they're both actually competing well and beating their teammates. But they're also, coaching young drivers. They're contributing to teams. They're helping teams to develop their cars and, team dynamics and all of that stuff. They're actively contributing in that way through the experience that they bring to the sport. Whereas you look at those three that you just named and you kind of ask, how are you bringing this sport forward?
Which kid out there is like, can I please get a Lance Stroll t-shirt? Nah. You want a Seb Vettel t-shirt, don't you?
Hilarious, isn't it?
Like, who wants the merch of these guys? Like, they're not, they wouldn't have following because they're not interesting characters and people, like, which is another crucial part of being in Formula One, because especially like we've seen with the Netflixification and Americanization of Formula One, that is such an important part of growing the sport and arguably will net you more money and more recognition than winning races, like being likable and being like, relatable.
Absolutely.
It's funny, we were talking with Tara about this in Miami. And she was saying that in the merch stands, everything had sold out except for number 18 Lance Stroll Aston Martin gear, where you I'm sure they couldn't have given it away for free. That's kind of how bad it is. And you're absolutely right. Like, that's a big point about Formula One. Every time he puts it in the barrier, we're like, of course he did.
Yeah.
There's no success anymore, celebrating success or putting on a pole, and the way that team has changed from Racing Point and how they really were batting way above their average for such a long time, and you could see how upset the team was when Sergio Perez left and Vettel replaced him, which wasn't necessarily Seb's fault in a lot of ways, but everything shifted, and there's no getting that back at all for this team until Lance Stroll leaves.
Yeah, which can you see happening while Daddy owns the team? I actually think it's more viable than not. Actually, more recently. With the way he's driving at the moment, I think it's actually possible that they might go, you know what? You go race in Indy or something else. Like, bugger off, we'll go put money into another team. That'll be Aston Martin Indy team or something. Like, they'll do that just because it's actually like, come on, mate, we can't keep running this into the ground. No one cares about you. It's becoming very apparent that you are here purely because of your money. It was an argument maybe 2 years ago that he was talented enough to be where he was, but now it's like you're in such a good car and you're performing so poorly compared to your teammate who is so much older than you. Like, all these things, like the car is literally your toy that your dad has bought for you and you're still underperforming.
Yep. It's pretty telling when, and we're just watching the highlights now, and Seb, that little turn he did, it's such a shame he couldn't get past, but the little turn he did in the runoff was pretty fantastic. But when he's 10 places up the road from you, in sixth, in a very competitive grid, yes, it is the green Red Bull.
If your teammate overshoots a corner, has to do a spin and come back on and he's still in front of you, you're done, mate. Like, that seriously is way too far. Yeah. That was like how many laps into the race? Not that many. Like, you shouldn't be that far off your teammate that early on. That's, poor.
Well, let's talk about qualifying and immediately put Lance Stroll back in the bin. I know we haven't taken him out, but he hit a barrier in Q1. And the point here is that the front wing is still very strong. He punted it front on into a barrier. And then when the red flag happened, I was like, can't have been from that same incident. He's probably stuffed it somewhere else, sure enough. T2 punts it into the barrier I think he just continued on the same set of tyres that he flat spotted, which he would have done because of getting into the barriers. But again, it's just like Of course he did.
Yeah.
Right?
It was unfortunately an all too familiar qualifying, especially with those bottom 5 with Stroll doing Stroll things and ruining everybody else's qualifying. And then both the Haas's and the Williams, this is just a bit too familiar actually.
Yeah.
Didn't like how some of that kind of settled to what we're used to. You kind of hope that that's maybe just a bit of something going on, at Baku, and we'll see what happens in Canada. But that was an all too familiar end to qualifying for me, or start to qualifying.
We thought we got rid of that, didn't we? Like this year was looking good, that we were having a real mix in qualifying, and now it's kind of settled back to those bottom ones being eliminated in the first round.
Yep. And it's unfortunate that some of these teams like Alfa Romeo and Haas carrying this Ferrari power unit, having big Ferrari power unit issues. In qualifying too, the restart after the red flag in Q1 was absolute mayhem. Absolute mayhem.
There's at one point where it's like, okay, quite literally, this many people can get through. It's going to be chaos. Like, you just need to call it. Like, or hey, you know what the smart thing is? Let's add 2 minutes. Like, let's just make a rule. If we have a red flag and it's under a certain amount of time, we just reset it to 5 minutes or 6 minutes or something. That makes sense. That's safe.
The only time Mick Schumacher was able to do anything. Over the whole weekend, as he got past Lando, I think, getting his elbows out to try and get some track position. But what I thought was really interesting is in those laps, there was some interesting timings going on, but Fernando was in such a good spot that he had to go off, in inverted commas, down a slip road and caused a yellow flag, reminiscent of Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg in Monaco going, oh no, I've got an issue with the car, got to go straight on, and completely causing some issues for all the cars behind. But again, hashtag wily old racer that he is. And this is how the grid looked. It was Charles Leclerc on pole, and that's the first driver to do this twice, this pole, for this race, I should say. Which is also bad because no one apparently ever wins from pole, as as shown today.
I don't want pole position.
Yeah, really. Perez, though, was faster than Verstappen in every session, including this one. Out-qualified Verstappen in second. Sainz in fourth. Russell ahead of Gasly, ahead of Hamilton. Tsunoda. Vettel was a surprise up in Aston Martin in ninth. Alonso, Norris, Ricciardo. McLaren... probably where they wanted, not where they wanted to be, where they expected to be, listening to Andreas Seidel. And, we were saying in leading up to this weekend that for Daniel, he doesn't necessarily need to be beating Lando at the moment. It's very clear that Lando's better with the car than Daniel is. It's very clear that McLaren have made the decision that they're going to develop the car around what Lando wants rather than what Daniel wants. But what he needs to do is just match pace and hold on, and qualifying just behind your teammate for me is good enough in that respect. For sure. Ocon ahead of Joe, who out-qualified Valtteri Bottas, who was in 15th. So that was a good weekend for
Ocon always just qualifying
13th.
I feel like that's you should put a plaque on 13th for him. Jeez.
And Gasly in 6th as well.
Yeah, Gasly in 6, you're right.
Not right. Yeah, that's a very good point. But yeah, Zhou Guanyu had a very good outing. Valtteri Bottas couldn't quite get it connected. He was almost out in Q1. The elimination zone was marginal. He was ahead of Kevin Magnussen in 16th, and Alex Albon and Nick Latifi 17th, 18th, useless Stroll in 19th, and Mick Schumacher in 20th. And as he said, Freya, it's kind of lining up now exactly where we expect sort of that 2021 vibes, which is a massive shame because we really would have thought we kind of hoped Williams would be further ahead.
And the Haas's as well. But then that Ferrari power unit and the reliability seems to be creeping into it massively. So, yeah, you hope that things will shake up again maybe after they have the summer break or whatever it might be. You might see people coming back just with a different energy, which you saw last year, which can be enough to really – so they're approaching races differently with their teams and teammates and that type of thing. But you just hope that, especially I'm thinking about Haas in particular, but that they can sort out those reliability issues because we've seen that K-Mag has absolutely got the raciness of K-Mag of previous years, and now he's got the car to do it in if it can make it to the end of a race.
Yeah, you feel sorry for him, don't you? Like he's come back after taking time off. He's found that love for it again because he's had to leave it alone for 2 years or whatever he was out of the sport. And he's come back and the machinery's just betraying him when he's in good positions doing good things. That's just got to be the most frustrating thing when it's nothing to do with like you and it's not your fault at all.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the race now. We love this Grand Prix. It is such
It is my favourite.
stunning looking track. We were just saying, watching it, that we all want to go next year. So maybe we should get our Lakeside Drive party going in Azerbaijan, in Baku. That would be outstanding. But it was an interesting start to the race. You called Perez to lead it, and it didn't even take him into turn one to be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that was the move right there, because you start on the inside of that corner. If you get a good start, you're on for it, and no one's going to want to risk their race and kind of do what happened last year where you go straight on. So you're going to want to kind of be conservative and go, no, I'm just going to stick into this. It's not worth riding off my whole race. I'll stay close. But credit to Perez. He made the move stick, but we'll talk about it a bit later. I'm sure. Was it actually worthwhile? Maybe he could have just made that move and not tried to bring a 10-second lead within a lap. Maybe he could have just conserved some tyres. But no, it was an excellent move and exactly what you want to start a Grand Prix.
The next point is my beginning of just absolutely putting McLaren and Lando Norris firmly in an on-fire dumpster inside another dumpster that's on fire, inside a massive garbage compactor that's on fire, because what an absolute joke and shit fight of a situation McLaren have been this weekend. I have never seen the absolute ridiculousness that I've seen, especially with this. So on lap 8, Daniel very professionally asks or says to the team, if this is all the pace that Lando's got, that's fine, but I've got more.
Yeah.
Also, different tyre strategies, right? Mm-hmm. Then Freya, what happened? What was the callback?
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm getting very frustrated physically here as well, for those who can see
arms
me.
everywhere.
Arms are just everywhere. Trying to overcut like Alonso, not only did it just not work because it was not even remotely possible from where they were on the track, but completely exposed DR to Gasly.
For like laps.
For which he called it. He said, if I can't move forward here, I'm going to get eaten up by Gasly, and it's exactly what happened.
Yep.
And we know that Gasly had so much more pace going in straight line speed, and just the inevitable happened. And it was just painful watching it play out and exactly what he could see happening. And then to have Lando at the end, like, I think I might be, just come on, mate. He was a child, an absolute child. And then I think we heard the engineer at the end saying, okay, so if, DR can't get up closer to Alonso, then we'll have a look at it later. Are you happy? Sorry, why are we asking him if he's happy?
Placate the baby.
No, absolutely. Just, absolute rage over here. McLaren, just sort your shit out, honestly.
Yeah. Placate the baby, absolutely. And he is that. And he's certainly not a top 5 driver when he's behaving like that. That kind of ridiculous, petulant attitude is absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that he had to quit back and say, so what? Like, so what? It's all about strategy earlier on in the race. Why do I have to hold position now? Well, mate, because DR suffered for you in that time. It's now your turn to do the same, and he couldn't do it. And that shows how shit of a driver this guy is.
And not willing to do the team thing as well. Like, okay, they've done it once in Monza, but even then asked if that was the best position for the team to be in.
Dick.
And then again here to say, that was about strategy, but this is different. Well, we're in this position because of you actually, so you can sit right where you are.
Daniel has fresher tyres, so you can't even make the argument that you've got more pace or tyres or whatever behind with 3 laps to go, and you finally got into DRS range and now you want to swap? Like, how about be closer 5, 6, 7 laps earlier when you should have been? Then we can have a conversation, mate. And if you're going to actually catch Alonso, let's talk about it. You weren't. You were nowhere near catching Alonso, so shut up and sit back where you were, take your points and go away.
And opening DRS on lap 50 of 51, are you serious? What are you doing? And you've been told to hold position.
Yeah.
Just absolutely maddening. Rage.
Just the fact that you opened DRS on that last lap to try and get as close as you can to the line, that's just unnecessary. There was a 20-second gap or something from the guy behind, I think. It was ridiculous. It was nowhere near you. You just had to cruise. Like, I don't know why you were doing that and potentially jeopardizing everything.
But where's the strategy for McLaren? Like, what's happened with this team? They are cementing themselves as a average midfield team more and more races that I see. You cannot tell me that didn't make sense to swap as soon as possible and let Lando race Gasly.
They were selling out for Lando strategy only today.
Yeah.
If they had have switched, let Daniel proceed, even used Lando as a rear gunner for 2 laps to build up a gap and then pit him because he had to pit anyway, you might as well have given Daniel a couple of laps, make sure he's got space so no one has DRS on him to continue on, maximize those tyres, and then, hey, we had a flag that meant Daniel got a free pit stop. Who would have thought? That's exactly what his strategy was. That worked. But the fact that he had to fight for so long behind Lando in DRS for a good 20 laps, wearing out his tyres way more than he had. If he could have gone way longer on those tyres, he probably would have had pace to push. Knowing that as well, it's just they sold out completely for Lando, and that just jeopardized everything about Daniel's race, and he still managed to beat him.
I just think it's rich of McLaren where Zach comes out and says he's not meeting expectations, and then Daniel is faster than Lando, and they don't invest in actually backing him up. Like they completely stuffed his race up until the point where, I mean, thanks K-Mag for causing, K-Mag's done that. Where else did he do that? In Bahrain a couple of years ago that caused that. He closed the pit lane, didn't he? That it was just like, if it wasn't for that virtual safety car, then DR would have had a pit. And we were all like, oh, if this pit stop is slower than 3.5 seconds,
it's
going to
really
be
nervous there.
Very, very challenging. If this is his best pace, I've got more, is what DR said on the radio as I see it pop up on the screen. Exceptionally professional compared to Lando. And
always,
regardless of what you think, honestly, and yes, I know you keep saying this, that I'm DR biased, but regardless of what you think about this situation, there is a reason why DR is a top 5 driver, and that is purely it. He is not a petulant child. He doesn't act out rather when mummy and daddy say, no, you got to hold position. Why? Think back to Russia, Lando. Change the tires. No, shut up. The guy has not matured at all. No. And it's fine that McLaren want to try and smooth things over by posting silly photos of DR and Lando, but in my mind, there's just absolutely no competition. And then look, it's interesting. Some of you listening have said, oh, well, here are the facts and Daniel's just not as fast. Yeah, that's true. But also, if you don't want to listen to this podcast, find another podcast or start your own, as far as I'm concerned. I just don't care. There are so many of you who are Australians and also people from around the world who love DR, who absolutely support it. And it feels like, TT, we've been the only podcast, at least in the last couple of weeks, that has been totally supportive of DR the entire time and not gone, oh, well, he should just leave and do something else.
Well, we're not shying away from, he's struggling. We'll admit the things that are going wrong, but you can't deny the guy is the utmost professional. Yeah, he's funny. He's a character.
Would you say he's a consummate professional?
Yes, he is.
Would you say that he's a consummate professional and you can buy that T-shirt now on Lakeside Drive website?
T-shirt that is on the Lakeside Drive website. Yes, that we do have new merch. But as soon as that helmet goes on, as soon as he's in that mode, he is so professional. We've never heard him speak out of turn. He's so professional on the radio. He's always just trying to do the best he possibly can, as opposed to Lando, which flips. He's all sweet and fun outside, and then he flips it on. He turns into a brat. He is the biggest brat. We just feel that Daniel isn't getting a fair shake in this car at the moment, and that's kind of what we've been talking about on this podcast. He hasn't had a fair go to showcase his talents and maximize opportunities because he's not been given those opportunities.
And he's a brat who hasn't won a race yet as well.
Hasn't won a race.
Yep.
And has only ever driven one car, a car that has been built around him and knows nothing else and hasn't had to adapt his style at all. So, go and actually do something that is challenging and is making you adjust and everything else and win, and then you can talk about it.
He seems like the grade 6 kids at the end of primary school who think they're top shit because they've been at primary school for so long. I know this. This is my school now. I'm in charge of everyone. And unfortunately, he hasn't got that rude surprise when you go to year 7 and you're the bottom of the totem pole again. And that's kind of what he needs, is a bit of a shake up to be a bit less comfortable, because he feels like he owns McLaren, and McLaren are kind of playing into that, unfortunately, which sucks for Daniel.
Exactly. It's being encouraged, which is really hard to watch. There has been the reactions to that side of things, though, and in particular reactions even to Zach's comments have been quite interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of people like Jensen Button coming out and saying, that's an awkward situation for your team to be in now that you've said those things. And there have been, we talked about Paul DeResta and I think even Lawrence at one point saying, well, actually, wait a second, let's look at the other side of the facts, whereby mechanical issues, these issues, bad luck when it came to, a couple of accidents here and there, your grid place at the end of any of these races isn't telling the full picture.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got other professionals out there who are actually trying to tell the other side of the story, which is interesting to see.
It's isn't the clickbaity headlines are getting all of the Lando fans, all riled up and saying, "Oh yeah, Daniel needs to leave." It's ridiculous. Yeah. Shout out to AB 2021 on Discord who says of Lando Norris, you can tell he was the kid who rode the scooter at the skate park just to mess with everyone.
He is a scooter kid, just so right.
That is absolutely spot on. It's interesting. We're just watching behind you, Freya, DR talk to Naomi Schiff on Sky. Although we can't hear it, you can tell by his body language that he's pretty. Sort of seems quietly confident, doesn't he?
Yep.
One of the things that I will say about Daniel is he's very good at surrounding himself with the right people. Yep. And you can go back and listen to TT my chat with Michael Italiano, DR's trainer from last year. And that was really insightful because, we could absolutely know for the last couple of weeks that Mike will be like, cool, mate, just put your phone down or whatever. Let's just focus on you being you. We know how good you are. Get it sorted out. And he'll be keeping him down to earth. Now, it's very likely that Lando doesn't have that. A lot of the other kids don't have that in the sport. So I think we'll see now this little bit of a lift in confidence for DR to be able to come through. But good luck, McLaren PR team, to try and sort this out and not have people turn against you because
they're lucky Daniel's such a professional because he's going to make it as easy as possible.
Yep.
This week would have been so tough for him, but we've seen nothing, no little snaps back, nothing. He's just been super professional, and that's what we've come to expect from him.
Yep. All right, let's go through our team-by-team analysis. And oddly, we're starting with Ferrari, who had a double DNF. Is absolutely correct. Frey, let's start with you. Carlos Sainz cannot get any luck this year. He is the opposite of Lewis Hamilton for his 7 on the trot. It just cannot pick up anything.
Can't. And it's so hard to watch where right where it feels like he's starting to get a bit more comfortable again or something's going well, like last week in Monaco, and then all of a sudden that luck is gone again and you suddenly feel like, we're back, he's back in back wherever bad luck lives. I don't know where that is.
Yeah.
Because they're back somewhere. I don't know where all the bad luck lives. Apparently wherever he does.
Boss has
where
got rid of it
Carlos is.
finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's really hard to watch and you hope that, again, maybe there's something over the summer break once we get through the next couple of races, go reset and, work on the car during that time as well and hopefully get some more reliable results in the second half of the season. But much like, we're talking about DR struggling to perform partially because of the car that he's got, we know that Carlos is an incredible racer. He's got incredible racecraft, seen it over years at multiple teams, and right now he just doesn't have a reliable car to get the results in. Yep. And when he does, he gets results like he did last week.
Yeah. That was the one thing I wanted to talk to Freya about because we both missed out on last week's podcast was how good was it to see him making good decisions, him telling the team to get stuffed. I know what I'm doing.
Yep.
That's the Carlos that we both like. All three of us actually really like Carlos as a racer, and it was good to see him be successful. But then something like this, completely out of his hands, like there's nothing he can do, and you just see that guy really has some poor luck. That probably like 4 times a season it feels like over the last couple of years have just like DNF out of nowhere, nothing to do with him, and you just can't come back from that against your teammate. And those kind of results, you would hope here, just say Leclerc did have a failure this week, like he still did. You'd hope that would be the week that Carlos would do well, but no, he's always got a DNF as well, or something else goes wrong. He can't capitalize on those random mistakes because it's always happening to him.
No, it does seem to be happening to him, and the weeks that it happens to him and not to Charles, for example, it means that you then start getting those points gap opening up, and then you have to play the team game as you get towards the rest of the season in order to put the team first.
And it doesn't tell the story.
And doesn't tell the story, and you don't get to see him at his best. So yeah, I hope he gets a bit more luck, but then also in those situations where he does get that, we also see what we saw last week, which was him making his own decisions, really acting with confidence and taking good options. So, but yeah, he just needs to have the reliability to do it.
Charles Leclerc also DNFing as well with a very smoky power unit. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we're talking, and as I said at the very top of the episode, that Red Bull's reliability issues would be the woes for this year. And it is now completely flipped.
How the turntables.
Indeed, TT. And now we've got 4 Ferrari power unit cars all retiring in this race. What's going on? Because they seem to have, and I kept saying they seem to have the most consistent and well-rounded package. That looks really good. So if something happens with one of the Red Bulls from a reliability point of view, then Carlos or Charles should be there to be able to pick up the pieces. But a double DNF in Azerbaijan, and especially when looking at the championship standings at the moment, Max is now on 150 points. Sergio is behind him in second on 129, and Charles is on 116, which is phenomenal. And Red Bull now 279 to 199 for Ferrari. So this neck and neck sort of swapping different races for championships.
Watch Mercedes slide into that gap.
Yeah, they will.
Yep. So Mercedes currently on 161 points in third, and McLaren's in fourth on 65. So McLaren, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Haas, Aston Martin, Williams, nowhere near any of those positions. But yeah, Mercedes is still there. I mean, and it's been luck, hasn't it, that Russell's been able to get onto some of these podiums and be able to make that work. But it's all they can do at the moment. We'll come to Mercedes in a bit. But yeah, Charles Leclerc just can't seem to get luck either at the moment.
I was in 2 minds, wasn't I? I was very
very excited.
And then also like, poor guy.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
you don't know how you feel about him, do you?
I know he's an excellent driver. I really think he's likable. But I like Carlos much more.
Yes, I think we can all agree with that.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a Leclerc problem. I think it's I like Carlos more. But I do like to see Ferrari fail because it is kind of funny. It is.
What's classic Ferrari?
Especially after this. Like they come out, like we've got the best car, they dominate testing, they do all this, and then they just go, well, we're done for the year, aren't we? We've sewn this championship up. Let's just not try anymore. And then it just all falls down. And that's kind of what it looks like right now is that car just is not getting developed any further. The updates they're bringing aren't helping. The porpoising's coming back, all these kind of things, and they can't get a car to finish. And the teams that they're supplying engines are dealing with the same problems. It's super frustrating. Paul Leclerc has had so many opportunities to do well, and Carlos as well, and the car has failed them both when early on that was the thing that was keeping them in against Red Bull. But you'd argue Red Bull's managed theirs much better, and the drivers, despite the mechanical issues, are in much better positions now than the Ferrari counterparts.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely spot on, especially about Sainz over Leclerc. although I will say, and I've said it,
it's not you, it's me.
Top 5 driver is Leclerc, not Sainz, but my heart says Sainz should be absolutely there.
He still hasn't got a win.
He hasn't, and he's got such great hair.
Who's going to get a win first, Lando or Carlos?
Carlos has to be.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Has to be.
I feel like it's more likely too.
Especially with that car. Yeah. Goodness, compared to everything else that's going on. Let's talk about Haas. One of the things that I wanted to mention, and K-Mag DNFing looks like an overheating issue, but Schumacher in 14th, K-Mag helping out DR, so thanks K-Mag. Good guy K-Mag. One of the things that I thought was interesting is watching Haas slip further back down the grid. They're not bringing upgrades, and they're probably not bringing upgrades because they can't afford to bring upgrades because Mick Schumacher keeps crashing and demolishing the car so much that there is, with all this cost cap, and they'll be wanting to do it properly, this cost cap, they're just like, we were going to spend some money developing this, but now we don't have that because we had to replace all these parts that we know work already. So potentially, Tommy, there's that kind of thing working out there too.
Just develop it and
just
lie. Say, just
be any of the other teams.
Go start a separate company. do all the research as that company, and then sell it for $1 back to Haas.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. That's what everyone else is doing.
Do it in the
let's be
NASCAR
honest.
team.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you guys doing on developing aero for NASCAR? It's an interesting ground effect NASCAR. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're trying to make a car that doesn't just go left.
Got a Ferrari power unit. There must be enough in the car that inspires them to lie. Like
Yeah, exactly. Like it's already built in.
Allegedly.
allegedly.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be half their issue as well, is the reliability is coming from that power unit more than it is anything else.
Yeah.
Hot desking in the Ferrari space hasn't been working well, it seems. It's kind of rubbing off that kind of laziness. Maybe they're getting roped into some early lunches and kind of stuff like that. They're just kind of like not doing their homework.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's then kind of lining up with Ferrari's success early, the first half of the season. They were doing very well, both Haas. And that sort of throws back to the first year of Drive to Survive, which is the 2018 season, and then 2017, I think about Haas in Australia.
Yep.
Phenomenally quick. And they stuffed their pit stops. So there is that old school kind of vibes again, as we're sort of seeing Haas and Williams down the back. Well, that's kind of what we've seen in previous iterations of the sport as well. But there was some conversation around Schumacher, and in amongst all the absolute ridiculousness of, DR needs to retire immediately to save face with him in McLaren, there was kind of this underlying current as well, Freya, about, well, if Schumacher keeps crashing, then should Haas just move him on?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. And you kind of forget how new he is to the sport as well, though. So, I mean, yeah, there's moments that I wonder whether he's, in that top 20 category of drivers. I don't think he is. I think Oscar Piastri is better. But does that mean that you immediately bin him because he hasn't got the results just yet? Maybe not, because he's still a rookie, really. But it will be hard if he gets to the end of the season, he still hasn't scored a point. That's going to be pretty hard to argue with.
Yeah,
that's going to be really tough, I think, for him to come back.
I mean, how long did George Russell do it for? Like 3 seasons or something? So
yeah, true.
And he's now on screen with like a point every race.
Yeah.
This year. So,
and that's where I think you've got to be careful with the newer drivers in terms of just not kind of throwing them out when they haven't performed in their first or second season. You do need that opportunity, and you need an opportunity in the right car. And so you did start seeing a few better performances from him earlier in the year, but not quite in the points yet, but certainly seemed to have a bit more confidence. He's got good mentorship and things like that, and you do wonder if you just need to give it a bit of time. Unfortunately, it's just such a ruthless sport that he may or may not get it, but he will probably have more of an opportunity than others will, because he does seem to be somebody who people are just generally warm to. Perhaps that's the name. But also, a good team player and somebody who is good to be around as well, which goes a long way. And it is really interesting. We could talk about other drivers as well, again, with all of the controversy with DR. Yes, we can argue about his quality of racing or whatever it might be, but there's as many people coming out saying, no, we need to keep him in sport because he's an incredible character. And that is important as well to this. And I think for Mick, he is somebody that people seem to like working with and warm to, so that will help him to buy the time potentially while he gets more confidence and hopefully get some results.
On that note, if he does move on, here's I've just fleshed it out in my head as you were speaking, Freya.
Oh, good. This will be good.
I can't wait to see
Daniel,
where this goes.
tell McLaren to get staffed, go to Haas, be the face of the American team where they all love him. Haas will become good. There you go.
That's it. That's your whole
He'll make
thought
so
process.
much more money in sponsorship and goodwill, and he'll be the king of that team. He'll drag Haas forward. He'll do a Bottas, and he'll drag that kind of lower team up to the top, get points, be way better than his teammate, and he'll make so much more money in sponsorship being like the face of the American team, which we're about to have Vegas. We've got Miami. We've still got Austin. We've got all these American races happening. Just, you heard it here first as it just came out of my brain 5 minutes ago.
Well done.
So just wanted to get ahead of everything just in case it does happen.
Great. It's not going to happen. And
It won't. But
and it shouldn't. I'll be very clear, it shouldn't. The only American thing that needs to happen is if Andretti gets in the sport, then he can go and be the face of the Andretti team. And that's as likely as Johnny Herbert winning a World Drivers' Championship. Well, to United, no,
Yeah.
to a different. Well, kind of in a partnership with V8 Supercars and his Extreme E team. So kind of yes,
yes.
No, actually, don't do that. He doesn't deserve
It's the
any
same
kind of
problem,
bloody comment.
James.
Yes, you're not wrong. Let's talk about Williams. Latifi got about 17 penalties for things, including and not limited to ignoring blue flags and having a mechanic touching a car after the 15-second warning has gone.
He overshot his pit box.
Which didn't matter because it was just the start.
You're going to get a penalty anyway. No, it wasn't.
No,
It was the
the
actual
start.
race.
It was the formation lap.
Was it?
So they pushed the cars
Push the car back.
to do a bit of a burnout to lay some fresh rubber down. So when they do come up to start, anyway.
Yeah.
But like, mate, he looked around. Yeah, no one else is touching cars. He still did it anyway. Like, Jos Capito is going to boot you as fast than anything else.
Latifi hasn't had great luck with his engineers at Baku. Last year was what was the debacle? It was like, come into the pits. No, we stay out, stay out. That was last year. I think they told him, or maybe they told him to stay out, but absolute mess. And then this year, engineers just touching cars when they're not meant to. And then just why not add ignoring blue flags into the mix? Just maybe he shouldn't come back to Baku.
Yeah, well, it's unlikely, to be honest, that he's coming back to Formula
week.
1 at all. It is, yeah. And one of our Discord moderators, LBS, it will be there to escort him around the grid walk, no doubt, as his personal bodyguard, formerly secret bodyguard until I called it out. So I was about it. But yeah, for both Latifi and Albon finished in 12th, apparently. He didn't see bloody anything of Tommy T.
Anything.
No.
Did we? Those cars were invisible as far as I said. Like, did not see a thing. We were very occupied with a lot of Alonso and some McLaren battles and stuff, so we can't really complain all that much. But yeah, just did not see those cars whatsoever. I don't think I saw Alphas either, to be honest.
No. There was one move I think Joe did on someone. Couldn't even tell you who it was.
On someone.
Couldn't even tell you who it was.
And it was
It just
nice.
happened.
And it was
Then
like,
we had DNF
oh,
and
that's
then
Joe.
you down one
Yeah, and as someone said in Discord, where's his money going? They can't bloody get the car sorted out.
Yeah.
it's all kind of Bottas's car.
Well, let's talk about Alfa Romeo. So yeah, gone into just funding his cycling. Hang on a second. No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, for Valtteri Bottas finishing 11th, just outside the points, is just slightly frustrating for him. Joe Guan Yu having a DNF. And look, as I've said a couple of times, I mean, he's the rookie, the only rookie this season. He's got a great person to learn from in Valtteri Bottas, who is so much happier this year, Freya, than he was last year. And unfortunately, he's had, and I haven't looked this up, but he's probably had the most issues out of anyone on the grid.
Yeah, it didn't really do much this race. We kind of were looking around, like you said, Williams invisible. Alpha didn't see them either. I'm worried that it might actually have been the horrific livery that in fact made him just like the old pizza box.
Bad.
Maybe he ate a lot of pizza, put the pizza box as a new livery, and that's why they're so slow. I don't know. That's my theory.
Because it's made out of like soggy oil-filled cardboard.
Just,
That should be in the recycling bin. It smells like pepperoni.
It's not from a reputable pizza outlet.
No. So yeah, it was a bit disappointing because he had an exciting start to the season, and like you said, we do seem to be so much happier there, but didn't really do much this weekend.
No.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Ferrari power unit, so it's unlikely that if he tried to do anything with it, that he would have able to survive the race anyway, to be honest. Let's talk about McLaren. DR finishing ahead of his teammate. Wow, what a surprise. In 8th, ahead of 9th. We've already spoken about this, but for McLaren, though, as a whole, apart from being incredibly dumb and terrible with strategy and unable to get a car that works well, really for either of them, let's be clear, we're talking about one of these points that we raised last weekend. Yeah, okay, Lando's outperforming, but he's still not winning races or championships with this car. So James Key needs to either bugger off himself, because he's like, the last time they've made a car that was any good, guess who was designing it? Adrian Newey. Yep. And that was Mika Hakkinen.
Yeah.
Winning championships. So it's been a long time since it was any good. Look, yes, for Lewis Hamilton, of course, getting his first championship in 2008 was pretty decent as well. But for the rap sheet that Adrian Newey has compared to anyone else, and I said this to someone the other day, McLaren need to go with as much money as possible to Adrian Newey in one of their other subsidiary companies and say, come back to McLaren. You've had your fun at Red Bull. It must be pretty boring drinking all that stuff now. come back over here and help design a car because we know, TT, that DR loves an Adrian Newey car.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious he had a lot of success driving that way. And you'd still argue, even with how Perez is driving, he was the best slash second best with Max at driving those cars designed by Adrian Newey. Whatever it is, the way they're taking this McLaren, Daniel does not like. It is kind of this middle. It's not fast like it was last year. Like last year, at least it had a lot of pace. It was so fast out of corners. Its exit speed was incredible. This was the slowest car down the straight this week, and that was disappointing to see. I don't know what they've done to go so far backwards, but they're sitting darks. And in a sport where overtaking is now done on straights as opposed to kind of through corners and complexes, it's done with DRS at the end of straights where you've gained enough speed and you outbrake someone. You need to have top speed. It is crucial, and that is the one thing the McLaren lacks.
Yeah, and they had so much more downforce than the Alpine of Fernando Alonso, who was in front of, who had
didn't even have a wing.
Didn't even have a rear wing. I think they had some paper and just sort of glued the paper sort of that way across. But yeah, okay, so DR was faster than Fernando in Sector 1 and Sector 2, but Fernando was pulling purples for a lot of that race in Sector 3, and that's, as you say, TT, unless you're going to get it up in between turns 2 and 3 in that straight
That's
there.
the only other spot.
It's hard to do. And when that's another straight and
That's
your rear
what I
wing
mean.
doesn't exist, basically.
So the point stands,
It's that. So what else is going wrong with that car in the slower corner sections of this track, especially that with that amount of downforce, Freya, that, we need to have that so DR or both Lando can feel comfortable.
I think that's it. And that's that the conversation between DR and Lando has kind of been dominated so much by just who's outperforming whom, as opposed to going, neither of you are doing exceptionally well here.
Yep.
And sure, it does look like Norris is getting a bit more out of the car at the moment. We've talked a lot about that. But you do worry that the development is not going in the right direction. It's really problematic. And when I worry about, when we get to Monza, for example, they're meant to be fast there. Don't think they're going to be. Not with what we saw today and with the speed of that straight. There's plenty more tracks on the calendar that are not going to suit the way they seem to be, the way that car seems to handle at the moment, and just how slow they are on those straights as well.
I think that's the biggest point. That McLaren is not a winning car. So whatever you've got set as a benchmark, throw it out because it's not working. So that car is not finished. Why are we set on this is the way we're going just because Lando's done slightly better? It doesn't mean you continue in that direction. It's probably completely fundamentally wrong. Go back the other way where you know that the best drivers in the world like a car that is towy that they can throw in and they can just hang on for dear life and correct it throughout corners. That is how every championship driver likes it. There's no one that likes these conservative kind of cars, and that's kind of what they've built, is this conservative kind of understeering car, and Daniel's telling you that it's not going to win, it's not going to do anything, and you've got no confidence in it because it's always just going to plow straight on into walls as opposed to spin out the rear end and like, oh, cool, I can hang on to that and save it and use my talent. You'd always prefer to drive an oversteering car. And that's what people like Max, people like Hamilton, all these past champions always liked a car that they could kind of wrangle and hang on to as opposed to kind of like force through corners and it's struggling because it just wants to keep going straight.
I'm just watching DR, to be completely off of your point, sorry, at a press conference with Fernando Alonso behind him, and DR's doing up and down motions with his hand and then going, oh, my back, and leaning over, and Fernando nodding and agreeing heavily with him. Look, I think you're right. I think, though, it's potentially the other way around. I think DR likes an understeer car rather than oversteer. Yeah. Similar principles apply, though, in that if you understand what the car is doing, and we're talking about minimum speed through... With the Red Bull and an Adrian Newey designed car, he was able to carry a higher minimum speed through corners than other drivers were. We talk about last or late breakers. It wasn't the fact that he just wasn't braking to the very end necessarily. It was that when he got off the brakes, he was comfortable enough with the car and the speed of the car that he was able to get through at a higher speed and get on the accelerator earlier, where that's where he would make that sort of that margin. And McLaren doesn't have that. And I think you're absolutely right about throw it all out, because Mercedes have thrown it all out. They came out and said, there's several directions. Well, mate, everyone always has several directions and making it faster. But whatever the direction they've gone in, at least for George, for one of these cars, it's a podium couple of times podium car. Okay, yeah, Lando's been on the podium once, but through they were strong in that race. But realistically, what else can you do? You are a average performing midfield team. As I said, yeah, you're fourth in the championship. And yes, that position means money long term, but you're nowhere near getting Mercedes. And they've been the ones that allegedly struggling more
Them struggling
than
is still
anyone
pretty
else. So for both Lando and for DR's sake, they need to sort it out.
Yep.
Whatever they're doing, it isn't working. Someone needs to be fired, and maybe they need to gut the whole team and start again, honestly, because, yeah, there's new things coming like wind tunnels being built and all that sort of other stuff, but that's ages away. Just do the Rebel Powertrains thing and go pinch everyone from Mercedes. Alpine, Fernando Alonso in 7th, Esteban Ocon in 10th, Fernando Alonso getting on the radio and McLaren believing him and saying, "Oh, this is all the pace I've got." LOL!
That alone, driver of the day.
Absolutely sails into the summer.
Yeah.
Hearing McLaren repeat that to both of their drivers, saying, Alonso has just told us he has no speed. We're sitting here going, tell us you're not falling
Really?
for that.
Lying.
Are you
He
for
is lying.
real? He's like sitting there being like, it's opposites day. Just kidding. Absolute, like, again, the McLaren team, as Mrs. Melanie, we're talking about Alpine, but McLaren team, come on, as if you fall for that. Like, just, and then not only that, you know, base your whole remaining strategy on it. Just seems rookie to me. But, yeah, wily old Nando, I've got no more pace. And then Ocon just doing what Ocon does best, which is holding everyone else up.
Yeah. Well, and like I said to you guys throughout the race, I was like, so he's in 10th now and hasn't pit. What does he expect to happen? Because if a safety car comes out, he's going to get net the same and he's going to be in 10th on used tyres. Like, he's done nothing. You've just run a nothing race. You've inconvenienced freaking everyone out there. That's literally all you've done. You haven't made any overtakes. You've just held up people and been there. The best thing you did was make Seb kind of like outbrake himself and do a spin. That was kind of, other than that, you're just running around in 10th all day.
Yep. And that's
so stupid.
And that's all that he's got. And he's signed for another 17 years, it feels like, with Alpine. And I just don't understand why they did that.
Someone who's won 4 championships on the trot, coming through the junior programs, sitting on ice, waiting to drive. It's insane
ridiculous
to me.
Absolutely.
And could be
ridiculous.
driving with Fernando Alonso. That is insanity. Why is that not changed?
Yeah, some conversations really need to be had there. Like, put the McLaren conversation in the bin and let's be looking at that and Ocon's performance. Going, why haven't we got...
I'd even take a year of like Oscar struggling over this like mediocre bullcrap that is Ocon just piddling around getting 1 point a week, like useless.
Yeah, he sits in 10th.
Just 10th every time. Qualifies in 12th, gets 11th. Or qualifies in 13th, gets 11th. Like, stupid.
Let's talk about Aston Martin, who are a lot further up the list than what we normally talk about.
because of
Not
one
Lance
guy.
Stroll. He was in 16th and he's useless. That's all that I want to talk about him. Seb Vettel, though, 6th. This green Red Bull seems to be working. They seem to have understood the package now. Seb's still showing that he's got it. I mean, it was a brilliant drive in a car that is average, and he's clearly faster than his teammate. 10 places clearly faster. Freya, we love Seb now. Didn't have it in the past, but we love him now.
Oh, you do.
Hopefully this can bring a little bit more joy back to him and his race weekends.
I think he should own the statement that Lewis Hamilton made 2 weeks ago saying, you know, never give up, because the speed at which he came out of that attempted overtake, spun that car around and was back on track, nearly took out Yuki on the way, which was but didn't.
Yeah.
And then you kept going, and like you said earlier, Tommy, going, the fact that you've done that and then you've still beaten your teammate is just, you know,
Being your
amazing.
teammate by 10 places,
Yeah.
like at the end of the race, is insane.
Yeah. But like you said, when you have that racing ability, James, and you can show that, okay, we're starting to get something interesting here in this car, and now it's over to the driver. I think that car has been interesting on that front because they have made such significant changes that the disparity between the two drivers is becoming really apparent. And it's just Vettel showing up Stroll in such a big way. And, yeah, more of those handbrake turns if you don't mind.
Yeah. But we were saying about Seb Vettel, and I mentioned this in the last episode, you know, not even halfway through the first. I think Campy said we'll give him 7 races, and race 2 he's like, yeah, I think Seb's done. It was so early to judge, and yet he's worked hard. He's been pretty quiet, apart from and he's been using his platform for looking at rights and sustainability and really important things, quite honestly. And he's come a long way since the Seb of the World Championships with Red Bull in the teens. But yeah, the disparity between him and Stroller is huge. But also it feels like he's the only sort of light in Aston Martin. Like otherwise the mechanics or the owners or the investors or the sponsors don't have anything at all. We mentioned a little bit earlier about all of the merch being sold out in Miami except for Lance Stroll's, and that just sort of absolutely ties in. Let's talk about AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly in 5th and Yuki Tsunoda in 13th. Many millions of dollars, pounds, euros spent on Formula One cars. Many long hours, time, thought process, design, chucked out, redone. But if you're going to fix a rear wing, you're going to bloody use gaffer tape, aren't you, Tommy Team?
Well, I hope they put that in the cost cap. That's probably like $5 worth of gaffer they use, so make sure that's recorded somewhere because that was definitely used. You love to see it. Also, could you have been more prepared and had some strips maybe
Seriously. I was about to say, use some of that cost in scissors.
Yeah, guys. No, they've just done like a zip tie over the middle where you rip it against that. Like, if you've used gaffer before, you know all the tips and tricks, but have some pre-cuts. Stick them to your arm. Like, come on, let's think about this because you're in a pit stop in a situation where you need to be quick. You don't need – it felt like there was one guy holding it and 3 people clambering to all rip it off. You're making it slower, guys. Just let the guy with the tape do it. Yeah, it was bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
Also, could they have done that while the tyres were getting changed as well?
Yeah,
not
seriously.
afterwards and it was flat on the ground.
Multitasking.
Like, guys, this is a struggle. Like, I'm not working in the pits, but – geez, you could multitask and do a few of these jobs at the same time.
I do also love that it's just not the first time that we've seen gaff tape on a rear wing as well. Like I think it was
Red Bull.
Red Bull.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Verstappen's as well.
I learned early on, like I went and saw some V8 supercars up close. There is tape used constantly in motor racing. On TV, you can't tell. Up close, they are trashed. Like these cars don't look as pristine as you would think. Like they actually go through and do a bunch of clear taping over all the Formula One cars over every panel gap and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So tape is not a foreign thing to a Formula One car. Usually it's done as discreetly as possible and usually color coded. Not so much just whatever's lying around.
Also bold of you to assume that V8 supercars is a motorsport.
Gasly had a good race though.
I was going to say Pierre Gasly in 5th. He was in 4th for quite a long time and was challenging Hamilton, which wasn't really his race, and getting past. But his best result for this year. It's been a bit of a dog of a car as well, the AlphaTauri Freya for most of this season. And both he and Yuki, if it wasn't for the black and orange flag and the gaffer tape, were in really good positions.
Yeah, that was encouraging to see them getting back up the grid again and starting to see Gasly back where he belongs, nicely settled in 5th or 6th position where he looks good. Probably should have pitted under the second virtual safety car. I think he kind of suffered there. But like you said, had some battles in there and I think, his performance there, especially once the Ferraris were out, where he needed to be to score solid points.
Yeah, it was great to see. Natural service is resuming, I suppose, when it comes to where everyone sits. Mercedes, though, 3rd and 4th, talking about resuming sort of kind of natural positions. Russell again on the podium and Hamilton in 4th. He exited the car, TT, basically didn't exit the car. He sort of sat on the halo holding his back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people are like, oh, Lewis, whatever, just get over it.
Nah, dude.
Mate, look at that onboard. And if you look
the
at
noise alone.
If you look at how a Formula One driver sits, it's not sitting, it's lying down effectively. There's not a lot of comfort in that thing. And if you're porpoising like that for that long down that main straight, it's very, very uncomfortable. And with only Canada around the corner, it's going to be very hard for him to recover. Angela's got a lot on her plate now to try and get him sorted out for these couple of races. But yeah, Mercedes, as we said, cut away one of their directions and went a different one that seems to be working better. They're certainly not the fastest 2 cars on the grid, but they're absolutely there in the 3rd position now.
Yep.
Sort of cemented in as well, I would say. And able to pick up some of the scraps. So if something happens like has happened with the double DNF for the Ferrari, then you're going to get a podium spot.
Yep. I think Hamilton actually had a better race. George didn't feel like he was racing anyone. He was just didn't do an overtake, wasn't anywhere near any cars. To George's credit, he's qualified really well this year, and that's what's kept him in it. But I think Hamilton has been a better racer throughout the year. Like on the Sundays, he has performed way better. George has just been in positions where he's kind of untouchable. So, but for where Hamilton started, he came back through. He put on some genuine pace and had to catch up and do some overtakes. It was good to see him back in control again, but that would be such a brutal thing to go through for just short of the 2 hours or whatever the race length is, and then have to turn around in another week. Well, you've just done it to do it again, and then next week as well. Like, you'll be so sore.
Yeah, it's no good. But for Mercedes, interesting, Freya, that Toto Wolff comes on the radio and says, sorry, we know this car is basically a piece of crap, Lewis. It's not fitting for you. We'll try and sort it out.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the team kind of acknowledging their role in their results. And I think we're not seeing that conversation in other teams, McLaren. And but that's the team saying we need to do better so that you can perform, because right now, and there's no question over where Lewis from a driver skill perspective belongs in those 20 drivers. And the same questions are not being asked because it's very clear that machinery is not there, and the team completely acknowledges that. Where's the magic brake dust? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So we can talk about this now. It was talked about throughout the race about putting in a universal ride height across all the teams kind of thing, and we all said that was stupid.
Yes.
It is categorically stupid, and we should not do that at all.
Yeah.
Do you think that Lewis or George would elect for a higher ride height to eliminate porpoising if it was detrimental to speed, or do you think they'd both suck it up for the better performance?
I think you're seeing them suck it up for better performance
That's
already.
what I mean.
They're already doing it.
I don't think either of those guys, they're so competitive. They go, any edge I can get, 2/10, give me it. I don't care what kind of condition I'm in at the end. Yep. If it's 2/10 a lap, I'm taking it. Like, I want it.
Yep.
So I think that's your answer, and that's why I think Toto and the team feel so bad, is because those guys are willing to suffer through it for the team for the best performance. So they're like, we need to get our act together and sort it out so our drivers maybe last at the end of the season and don't need to have new spines put in.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, not sure they could afford new spines for those guys. It's interesting to see how they develop, and it will be. I mean, I don't think, and Munnis pointed this out last episode, I don't think we'll see Lewis Hamilton retire this year. Where they line up for next year with learning about the new regulations, watching what Red Bull and Ferrari have done, mistakes and, the positives and that sort of other stuff, getting it together to see what happens for next year. But yeah, as you say, certainly Russell has been outperforming Lewis because he's got a better understanding and more comfortable potentially with this car. But also there's been a lot of luck involved with that, a lot of safety cars, virtual safety cars and other bits and pieces where he's landed on a pit stop side on the better side with strategy. So it must be hard to be in Lewis's shoes at the moment in terms of seeing how this is. He's 6th in the championship. I think I read a stat somewhere that since 2000 and 2010, both Hamilton and Vettel, either Hamilton or Vettel have been in the top 2 of a championship. And this is the first year that hasn't been a thing. Yep. Don't quote me, and that's probably a later year.
Right,
but it's a changing of the guards thing in some respects. But as you said, Hamilton's race was much better, and he's did some amazing overtakes in a lot of discomfort. But that's the kind of, maybe this is the underdog if we do see him come back next year to take a world championship to get his 8th and retire on that.
Yep.
Maybe that's a better story.
And also, if we're putting money on any team to kind of come through this season with answers and develop a car and have some magic, I don't know. Like, what was the steering wheel movement that we... DAS. Like, this is the team that does all these wild and wonderful things. Like,
and aren't wasting money on 2 drivers crashing their cars every week.
That's it. And their reliability's fine. Yeah. Their reliability, is great. So I wouldn't put it past them to kind of... through the mid-season break, second half of this season, come up with something. Like, imagine if they find something as revolutionary as like the double diffuser or something like that, which just flipped a championship on its head and going into the next year, like won Braun a championship. Incredible. And I wouldn't put it past, like if you're going to pick a team, it's Mercedes to come up with that kind of revolutionary thinking.
Yeah. Well,
and
it was
to
Braun.
break these new, exactly.
So they have it in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have it in them. Red Bull, Max Verstappen first by about 7 years, it feels like, and Sergio
lot.
Perez in second. He was having a good chat with his race engineer, TT, one of your favourite moments of the race, wasn't it?
It was. Well, first the engineers told him basically to slow down because you know better than anyone what it's like to lose a race from here. And then he clapped back with like, my tyres are getting cold. That's why that was a 1 minute 46. Just the sass coming out of Max because he's so far ahead. He was 20 seconds ahead of his teammate, who was 20 seconds ahead of Russell, I think. It was just absolute trouncing by Red Bull from the start. I mean, I think you've got to give credit to Perez for jumping the Ferraris at the start, because if the Ferraris are still in it, we're going to have a different race, obviously. But I think that move alone set it up to split them, to have them leading, and then give the opportunity for the Red Bulls to do that. Max had the pace the whole race, though, like over his teammate, even though he out-qualified him by a fair bit.
Yeah.
It was really good qualifying from Sergio, but Max definitely had the pace all day. He was by far the fastest guy out there. He didn't end up with the fastest lap that was given to Sergio, but for consistent pace, it was Max all day, and it was kind of his race from lap 10, you could see he was going to get to Sergio and go, all right, mate, you need to move over here because I'm coming through, or we're going to have another situation in Baku.
Yeah, which Red Bull cannot afford. They got PTSD from the last one. But yeah, Sergio had this confidence, Freya, didn't he, that coming out of Monaco and of course winning that, and you could see in his driving style for the whole weekend that, you know, 2-year extension for Red Bull, which is fantastic news for him. All of these things, but also you're still the second driver, mate. Sorry.
He didn't start his race like that, did he, Freya?
He didn't. Like that start was amazing. Just going straight into that first corner, completely owned the track there, which was great. And like you said, if the Ferraris were still in the race, that would have been an even more important move.
Yeah.
And he set it up well for both of them. I didn't feel like between those two there was the same level of, either one of you could win this one. It's like, no, this is Max's race, even despite the qualifying result, which was really exciting to watch. Like Verstappen absolutely nailed that last sector in qualifying, but then Perez went and did the same thing as well. It was great to watch. And then I think Perez also a bit of strange luck on the, they say bad luck, but it was just weird to watch in his pit stop.
Oh, yeah.
Just really slow. Yeah. And it just didn't look like there was a reason. There wasn't a wheel that wouldn't come off or anything like that. It was just looked like it was just
like
halted for a minute.
Something to do with the gun, like giving the go-ahead.
Green light.
Yeah.
Green light just never came. Yeah.
I just hate seeing someone's race in jeopardy for something like that, which is just so outside of their control. And, anyway, so hopefully you don't do anything like that again. But, Red Bull really dominated.
As they probably will for the next couple of races. We're going to Canada in only a couple of days' time, and that is going to be a fantastic race. Freya, you're going to be there in person, which is going to be very exciting. You get to be eyes and ears on the ground. Another racetrack, which we would love to do, TT, I think, as well. So we'll just all be envious of you, Freya, whilst you're doing that. Well, that's our team-by-team analysis and our Azerbaijan GP race review done and dusted, with Mclaren and Lando Norris both firmly in the bin on fire. Our fantasy league, though, Campy's favourite part of the podcast. I think we should do that now. Fantasy. There's 153 of you in the league at the moment, and it's so great. But I reckon we could do more. I reckon we can get at least.
Never too late, because Freya and I always forget to update.
At least 200.
Well,
to be honest, it's not even. I don't care where you come. I don't care about your team score or points
team
anymore. It's all about your team name. And there's some absolute fantastic ones here. I'll begin us with Sergio Super Yacht Shenanigans, Tully C. If you know, you know. Pray for rain, but not too much. Steen N. James Swore, gasp, yes. Joshua A, I do, but again, only for great effect. Flyovers for Life, Tara G, yep. 0 pods, 0 wins, Trent K. I'm only imagining if...
That's good.
Yep, good. why does my team name make Campy snort? Daniel B. Drones, everything does, I think. Drones are the new flyover. Byron H. Yeah, they're firmly in Tommy T's bin. Full bin, Yoss and the DR critics. Daniel T. Sebastian Vettel's rainbow bicycle. Dennis O. Heavy Vettel, rock and stroll. Anthony B. See you in Montreal, Jimbo. We won't. LBS. A, because he'll be too busy protecting the Prime Minister of Canada, Latifi, and also it's because Freya will be there. Well done, Baku. We had to get in there. Catherine L. Zach, McLaren Bin Chief, Richard L. Ricciardo Appreciation Society, Josh L. Yoss, put yourself in the bin, Zach B. Hillary. Uncle Buck in the bin, Jane W. Science gets pole like Munnis gets technology. Nicholas H.
Sounded way more sexual at the start there.
Pole position. Anyway, that's great. Thank you so much, guys, for being part of our fantasy league. But also thanks for being part of our Discord server and also for sending messages through Instagram and leaving comments either on YouTube or wherever else. I try and reply to as many as I can. So please send them through. You can either also find both Tommy T and I on socials. There's a link to us to follow us in the description below. You will see absolutely no new posts from Tommy T. I think the last thing he posted was 2019. Excellent. Good. But there's occasional stories about listening to this podcast, which you already do if you listen this far into it. But guys, it's so good to do this in person. Tommy T, thank you for your house as a venue and your double screens with one screen on the top for racing and timing down the bottom. It's been great to be here. And Freya, thank you so much as well for it's great that we're here at the same time.
It is. I only flew 150 hours just for this podcast. So.
Just for this? Yeah. You're an absolute legend. If you want to be a legend too, like Freya, you can do two things. Either firstly, you can leave a rating or review in either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or secondly, you can jump onto our website and check out Tommy T's new merch designs.
He has a season and a half late.
He has been a consummate professional in developing a consummate professional t-shirt, a campy saying. I think we'll only leave it up there for maybe a month or so, and then we'll put a new design up, which means it'll stay up for another 9 months before you put up a new design. Is the Tommy T way. He's the busiest man in the world. Yep. But you can support the show via that. We don't do advertising. We everything's done for free, basically, for you. You guys are our main focus, unless you don't care about Dan Ricciardo, which, as I said last time, stop listening to podcasts, put yourself in the bin. Yes, right.
T-shirts and leave.
But that is it for this race review. We'll chat next Monday for our Canadian Grand Prix race review and watching what Nick Latifi and Lance Stroll do for Canadian on Canadian crime in Montreal.
Also, Freya and I are just sitting right here. You don't have to yell.
Who?
You don't actually have to project your voice to all of the listeners.
Not with that attitude.
That many kilometers.
Not with that attitude.